2016 elections, once again. This time we have more Reefer Madness coming out of Arizona and other places as well. I'll get to those stories probably in another video, depending on how it's going to be to get through this one. This is a pretty big one. Um, so, not only do we have the people that you would normally expect to see in this campaign against these legalization efforts. So you have your pharmaceutical industry, your alcohol, tobacco lobbyists, um, prison food providers getting in on the action, Discount Tire, uh, billionaire casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, and the list goes on. There's the lady in Florida that is the heiress to the Publix chain. She's pushing money into these propaganda efforts to squelch the vote. I think really what they're trying to do is increase the vote against the legalization. I don't think they're really trying to change anybody's mind. They're just trying to mobilize their anti-marijuana whatever have you know, be it the customers that shop at Publix, or be it the customers that shop at Discount Tire. I don't think they really care if their customers vote either way on it. They just want to get their money in on the effort to stop it. I have an article here from the Republican Arizona Central, from Yvonne Wingett Sanchez, who I think I follow her on Twitter because she seems to have she's the one that keeps reporting on these stories coming out of Arizona that I keep reading from Arizona Central. Anyway, props where props is due. So I'm not really, I'm kind of reading word for word here and there, but I'm going to put in my 2 cents, and I'm going to kind of reword some of this and skip a few things. So she's talking about this Victory Outreach church in West Phoenix. The pastors and churchgoers evangelize drug addicts back to health with scripture, faith, and tough love. It's just a place where people go to get clean, maybe. I don't know much about it. I looked at the website, and it looks like a typical church-style outreach for drug addicts. I'm sure they help a lot of people and whatnot, but the idea that you have faith bringing people out of drug addiction, I guess that's what works for some people. It's not going to work for everyone. So I kind of criticize people that take that approach, because it doesn't work for everyone. And if you assume that someone can't be helped unless they can be saved or whatever, I'm just not buying into that philosophy. So they say that rescuing addicts is one of the church's primary ministries. And they've actually taken on a political dimension. The path towards harder drugs almost always begins with marijuana, said Assistant Pastor Jose Gonzalez. That's why he's urging the Victory Outreach congregation to vote against Proposition 205. The $4 million campaign to keep recreational marijuana illegal has been funded by business and industry groups, as I've said, but they are getting help from an influential and informal coalition of evangelicals, Catholics, and Mormons who are motivating their flocks to vote against the controversial measure. While some faith leaders in the state support legalizing marijuana, these faiths are telling their members that Prop 205 will contribute to the decline of generations of children, jeopardize public safety, and sow the seeds of harder drug use. So again, nothing new here. They just took the memo that everybody that are running these campaigns around the country right now have received from who knows who put this memo out. But what we have is the same talking points, the same propaganda being used over and over again to scare people about this marijuana legalization, people that might not know the facts about marijuana. And I don't know what kind of rock you have to live under these days to not know the facts about marijuana. All you really have to do is know that it doesn't do all the bad things that these guys are talking about. Like, for example, they're onto this whole idea that it's going to decline generations of children. What does that even mean? jeopardize public safety, and sow the seeds of harder drug use. All these talking points have been debunked when it comes to marijuana. It's just over exaggerated, paranoid, nanny state type stuff. Alcohol is available out there too, and alcohol is far more dangerous, far more physically addictive, far more intoxicating, and whatever you're saying about marijuana, you can already say about alcohol. But alcohol is legal, so where are you taking the stand at? That it's okay for it to be in the black market because not as many kids are going to have access to it? I don't understand that. All right, so Gonzalez, who's 57, says it's not that it's immoral, and he's talking about marijuana. It's that it'll lead you to things that will lead you to immoral things, and that's what we've seen. Now, so does anything else. So does alcohol. If you drink a couple of drinks of alcohol, you might do stuff you normally wouldn't do. That's a fact. That's why there's so many unwanted pregnancies, in case you haven't noticed. Same thing with a lot of things. So it's basically self-control. You can't mandate self-control. You can't make self-control part of your philosophy, because everything would be illegal if that was the case. If you just took a couple of people's bad examples of how they didn't exercise self-control, then everything that we have would be illegal. You wouldn't be able to drive a car because too many people would be driving too fast or crashing into people because they just don't care. Then he says, we've helped people who are drug addicts, and they've told us, we just started with marijuana, but later on our body wanted something else. The evangelical church work hard with the youth who care for the whole community, and we believe if this passes, it will affect the future of our state and nation. Now, the first part of that, where he says we have helped people who are drug addicts, and they told us we just started with marijuana, but later on our bodies wanted something else. I don't believe that. That's a flat-out lie. All right? You don't really work with real addicts then, if that's what you're talking about, because I know drug addicts. I've worked with addicts myself. I've seen people come off of pharmaceutical medications. I've seen people come off of heroin. It's not pretty. And I'll tell you one thing, is it's doing these drug addicts and people that are really trying to get clean from real hard addictive substances, it's doing them a big disservice talking about marijuana like this, because nobody believes in this gateway theory. It's been debunked by every leading scientific person that's looked at it. Every disciplined study has come with the same conclusions about it. It's just not a thing. Marijuana is not a gateway drug that leads to harder drugs, period. I really hate to keep going over that point, but even the FBI and the DEA have recently disclosed that they don't believe the gateway theory. So it's not really something that you can use in your propaganda machine anymore. No one believes it. Nobody believes it because everybody knows that it's bullshit. Beyond conversions and worshipers, or beyond conversations with worshipers and clergy, Victoria Outreach West Phoenix is hosting a community gathering at 10 a.m. on November 5th to make their case against marijuana legalizations to the community. The Catholic and Mormon churches are promoting the event, Gonzalez said. This is something we really don't want, he said. Well, it's good to see that the Catholic and Mormon church could finally get together on something, besides how much money they're going to not pay in taxes while they go out there and do political events like this. All right, so Prop 205 asks Arizona voters to legalize cannabis for recreational use and establish licensed outlets where sales of the drug would be taxed, similar to the system in Colorado. Marijuana is illegal under federal law, but Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act would allow people 21 and older in Arizona to possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana and grow in their homes. And I've looked at the plan. It's a pretty good plan, other than the fact that it don't look like a lot of it takes effect until 2018. You might not be able to see a dispensary or a place that sells legal marijuana until sometime after that, but I don't know, we're going to wait and see how this all goes, if it even passes. So there's several faiths opposed. The religious opposition to legalize marijuana is coming from several faiths and one major Christian nonprofit group, the Center for Arizona Policy. From evangelical churches on the west side to Mormon pulpits in the East Valley and Catholic congregations in between, faith leaders are counseling their congregations to vote against Proposition 205. By legalizing marijuana, the clergy warn Arizona would send the message that drug use is socially and morally acceptable. It could lead to the increased drug use, put people on the path to harder drugs, expose children to pot-infused edibles, and increase the number of drugged drivers, they say. So let's rewind that one. By legalizing marijuana, the clergy warn Arizona would send the message that drug use is socially and morally acceptable. How about let's take a positive stance and say that no, quit demonizing marijuana, and let's just say that by legalizing marijuana, Arizona would send the message that it is not something bad. It is something that is acceptable, and it's not something that you would consider like drug use. Like whenever people say marijuana and drug in the same context, like marijuana is some kind of drug, I've always took offense to that. Marijuana is a plant. It's an herb. In order for something to be a drug, it seems like it has to be concentrated. So even concentrated marijuana still doesn't rise to the level of drug. Is it intoxicating? Yeah. But is it a drug? Is it something that, I don't know, there's just like the addictive qualities really is what makes something a narcotic or a drug. It's like the next level of substance that's not just benign, and now you have something that not only is it benign, but it also gives you some kind of a euphoric effect. And then there's one more level higher than that. It's no longer benign because the effects can be so intense that you could die, or you could do something really crazy and not even know it, or whatever. Or there's even the next level of that where it's highly addictive, so right when the effect wears off, you feel like you need more, and every day when you wake up, you can't function unless you do more of it. Marijuana doesn't go anywhere near those last two. So let's just stop acting like it's such it's such a bad thing. If you take marijuana out of the equation, or out of the category of drugs that are really dangerous, like methamphetamine and heroin and crack, and if you take it away from that list and separate it, then automatically people will understand what you're dealing with. And I'm getting pretty sick of these religious groups and these propaganda pushers acting like these younger people are just complete idiots. Like, what did they say again? It's going to send the message that drug use is socially and morally acceptable. To who? Are you talking about the kids that you've been lying to about marijuana for the last 40 plus years? Ever since the original Reefer Madness was lying to the adults about the marijuana so that the kids wouldn't even have to know about it. The adults already got all the negative propaganda, and they were so afraid of it that they would do anything to keep their kids from using it. The propaganda evolved into the 70s, where the propaganda was actually aimed at the kids. Like, this is your brain on drugs. They're not talking to the adults anymore. Now they're talking to the kids. Or, in the 70s propaganda with taking the wrong acid and all this stuff. It's just all like the propaganda that worked on the adults first, and then they just pushed it right onto the kids. So the next part of that paragraph is that it could lead to increased drug use. In the states and places around the world that have relaxed marijuana laws, the opposite has been true. Especially children or teen use, or whatever you want to call it, underage use, has actually declined in places where marijuana has been legalized for recreational use, as well as medical use. Those are just real facts right there. So unfortunately, when the church is making decisions, they don't usually go by facts anyway. Churches hardly ever use facts. They have the Bible, and that usually backs up anything that they do, in their opinion. So they think that it's going to lead to increased drug use and put people on a path to harder drugs. If anyone believes that, put a comment about it down below, but nobody believes it. All right, and exposing children to pot-infused edibles. So the pot-infused edibles, again, if it's legalized, the pot-infused edibles won't just be in a nondescript Ziploc bag with no label on it, looking like a cookie or whatever. But if you have a legalized system where the regulations are in place, then you have one place where you can go to buy these pot treats or pot infused edibles, they call them. You have one place where you can go to buy them. They have to be labeled properly. They have to be labeled so that people know that there's marijuana in them, and they have to be child-proof packaging. Beyond that, it's up to the parents to be responsible parents, as always. You know, you're not supposed to keep a loaded shotgun or a loaded pistol sitting on the table, are you? You're not supposed to keep your bottle of Vicodins and your fentanyl mouth spray just sitting there where the 5-year-old kid or younger or older or whatever, where your kids can access it, do you? I mean, do you have your pornography magazines just sitting on the coffee table there, Dad, Grandpa, or what, whoever you are that's making up this bullshit? Because come on, man, be for real. If someone had some pot-infused edibles, they're not going to want their kids to have access to them, first of all. Second of all, they're just going to have them hidden, you know? I mean, that's all there is to it, man. Drug drivers, no proof of that. No proof, besides no proof of them that are even being these marijuana drug drivers that are doing anything dangerous out there. There is no statistical proof or even anecdotal evidence that you can point to that would say that now that marijuana has been legalized in places like Colorado or Washington State or anywhere else, that there's actually even an increase in the amount of people that have been known to drive stoned on marijuana. The only way you do it is with the new ways that you collect data that are adjusted because of the law. Before, they didn't have that kind of data collection that was scrutinizing everything that happened on the road and testing everybody for marijuana now. Before, if someone got in a car wreck and it was a drunk driving, obviously, you know, you can smell booze everywhere and there's blood and dead bodies and twisted metal everywhere. The cop picks up the empty fifth. Oh, alcohol. They might give him a blood alcohol test if he lived and send him off to court with the proper paperwork. Or if he's dead, they might not even do that. They might just be like, yeah, he was drunk driving, check. Back then they didn't test for everything in the book. They tested for alcohol. Because alcohol is the one, if you ask any cop that has been on the job for more than 10 years, if you ask any EMT worker that's been on the job for more than 10 years, if you ask anybody in the emergency room, what's causing all these wrecks where people are coming in mangled up? And they're going to tell you it's alcohol every time, unless it's pills. That's another new one that's been on the rise. So there's just no backup on these claims about the drug drivers. So Sunday worship services earlier this month, Arizona had 419,000 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints were read a letter from the faith's first presidency. The October 12th letter was intended to address in a nonpartisan way proposals to legalize marijuana in Arizona, California, Nevada, and other states, an issue it believes has significant community or moral consequences. Now, this is why I tell younger people you have to go vote. Even if it's a midterm or whatever, you always have to go vote. Because these big churches, I call them mega churches, these mega churches, every time it's November, they vote. If it's a vote that happens not in November, they vote. They vote, they go to church, they vote, and they go to church. That's all they do. They go to Florida in the winter, and they come back home, and then they vote. They vote before they leave, and they vote when they get back. That's all they do is they vote. These people are old. They go to church every Sunday and give the church most of their money and the casino the rest, and then they go vote. So if you want to win, you have to mobilize your friends, you have to go vote yourself, obviously. You have to mobilize your family that you know are for these things. Like if you're for these marijuana measures, you got to mobilize some people to vote. Did you hear what I just said? 419,000 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was read a letter, and I quote the letter, "Drug abuse in the United States is at an epidemic proportions, and the dangers of marijuana to public health and safety are well documented." This is the letter. That is a flat-out lie. There is no public health and safety dangers. That's why we need to call the DEA and tell the DEA that there is no public health and safety dangers from marijuana. You don't see it. I just said, go to the emergency room, talk to the cops, talk to the EMT, talk to the ambulance guys. Where's these wrecks coming from? It's not marijuana, man. It's alcohol. Anyway, that's just another slap on the face. So the letter said also, recent studies have shed light particularly on the risk that marijuana use poses to brain development in the youth. That's a flat out lie. I've been seeing this propaganda time and time again being used by Kevin Sabat, from Sensible Approach to Marijuana, all the way to the people on Capitol Hill arguing against marijuana legalization in their, briefings or statements that they said when the DEA decided not to reschedule. A lot of people were giving their comments about it, and a lot of them had this to say, that almost word for word, marijuana use poses brain development problems, poses risks to brain development, and it's always that light wording. There's no specifics, there's no exact reasoning why or what, where the study came up with its information. And then if you look into it further, you realize that there is no study like this. There's no study at all like this. The closest thing to these studies that I could find was studies back in like 2012. 2011 had one, 2012 had another one, 2013 or 14 there was one more, 2014, and all of these studies conclude the same thing. None of them concluded that marijuana could be the thing that definitely caused any kind of developmental problems in any of these studied cases. In fact, two of those studied cases was alcohol and marijuana combined. So that didn't, if there was any problems there, I guess you have to go right with the alcohol. But another one was a study of marijuana and developmental issues, and it actually proved the opposite. It actually said that marijuana use didn't cause any developmental problems with the brain. It actually, though, grew brain tissue. That's pretty crazy. Or it repaired damaged brain tissue, and where your brain is connected through a series of neurons, and basically it's like this electrical grid. And if there's weaknesses in that grid, it's not going to work properly. You're not going to be able to think properly, or your memory might not fire right. You might not remember the right thing you're trying to remember, or even be able to remember anything at all. That's the thing that marijuana repairs. THC has been studied to be something that does repair this and makes it so your brain will fire properly on all cylinders. So that's the study that I've seen. I've never found these studies. I've been looking for them though, and I'm on the lookout. If you can find one, and you believe that study is legitimate, then go ahead and put a link to it somewhere for me so I can check this study out. But I'm really sick of seeing this being carted out there as fact, because they have this study that says there's this development problem in youth. I don't buy it. And they also say in this letter that the accessibility of recreational marijuana in the home is also a danger to children. The same people some people would say the same thing about having a shotgun in the home, or anything else that adults are supposed to be able to have that aren't something that kids are supposed to have access to, like liquor and pharmaceutical medicines, keys to your car. There's certain things that you just don't let the kids have access to, or it's on you, is what it is. Like if your kid accidentally drives out on the road, a 4-year-old kid, and runs over somebody or something, that's your fault, not his fault, not your kid's fault. That's your fault. So, this whole idea that having weed in your house is automatically a danger to children is really off the charts. Alright, and then at the end of this crap, we urge church members to let their voices be heard in opposition to legalization of recreational marijuana use. Doesn't say anything about anybody wanting to say anything on the other side. Your voice don't count. We don't want to hear you because we take the moral high ground because we're the church. And I fucking hate it. Tom Freestone, a Mormon, in case you haven't figured out, I'm not very religious at all. Matter of fact, I'm a straight up atheist. And I don't care if you don't like that, then you probably just should unsubscribe. See you later. But yeah, this whole idea that religious people who don't pay taxes, these churches are tax exempt, can go out and have public events where they want to take a public position against something that's going to be voted on, and try to urge people blindly to just say no to something that they don't know anything about. He said the letter was a reminder for church members to study the issues and pray before casting their vote. Recreational marijuana, he said, could lead to moral decay. And that's the kind of ignorance that's out there, you know. These people are so embedded in their dark chasm that they live in called religion, where they can't get outside of it because, you know, I think religion, a big part of it is the more religious you are, the more you have to hide, for one, and the more you're running away from, but also the more you become in this glass house, you know, like, you don't want to do something that somebody in the church knows that you do that's not something you're supposed to be doing. So marijuana is a big no-no. And if I've said it before about authority figures and why marijuana is always something the government's going to be against, is because it opens your third eye. It makes you see through the bullshit. And this is no different. Religion has been against marijuana from hundreds of years ago. There's a story about the hash assassins and blah blah blah. You know, someday I hope I can do a story about that. There's got to be some kind of tie-in, and I think this is a pretty good one. But we're not quite gonna go to the level of that. Like, go all the way back to the days when, you know, hash and weed and, you know, it was big commodities. You know, Marco Polo, East Indies Trading Company, spice. So religion's always been on the side to oppose marijuana because marijuana opens your eyes. Marijuana is, for all intents and purposes, the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. You know, the fruit that that opens your eyes and lets you see things for what they really are. Whatever that tree of knowledge actually, whatever its magical powers is. I haven't leveled up there yet, so I don't really actually know, but I do know this, is that the church is always against those things. Anything that opens your eyes and lets you see, like, all the way around things and lets you see the real thing for what it really is, and not just, you know, you're not looking at the facade around something to make it attractive to you to suck you into it. I could go on and on about it. I really don't want to go any further about this whole article, to be honest. They're acting like it's a big deal. They're putting a lot of pressure on their clergy members to vote no against this measure. So months ago, the Arizona Catholic Conference, representing 4 bishops, issued a rare joint statement to the state's estimated 1 million Catholics, published in the Secretary of State's publicity pamphlet. The statement says, now wait a minute, I got a problem with that too. This is published in the Secretary of State's publicity pamphlet. Forget about the separation of church and state. Alright. So the statement said, marijuana is harmful to children and families and sends the message to kids that drug use is socially and morally acceptable. It went on to note that marijuana can harm brain function and lead to an increase in use among students as well as related traffic accidents. I've already went over all of that, and it's all bullshit, as we all know. Alright, he goes on, substance abuse is a real issue that bishops and many religious people are very familiar with and did not feel this sent a positive message, especially to the youth, said Ron Johnson, executive director of the Arizona Catholic Conference. If we were to legalize in Arizona for recreational use, it would be saying it is a good thing when bishops don't believe that it is. We believe it is harmful. Well, that's great that that's what you believe, but I don't even believe in your God, so I don't even know how believing stuff seems to make a difference. So you're saying that the bishop don't believe that it's good, so it's not good, and it's just bad. If it's not, the bishop don't like it, then it's got to be bad. Why are we doing it? We can't legalize this. The bishop said it's bad. The bishop is the same bishop that when some priest does some child molesting, he just takes that priest and moves him to a different city across the country somewhere, and then brings a child molester from that city into here that you never heard of before. That's what the bishops have been doing. So why should we listen to them? They don't know what's safe for children or morally acceptable. to them morally acceptable seems to be molesting little kids. The conference also voiced its opposition through Catholic media channels, including the front page story in the Catholic Sun, which distributed to 120,000 households. Johnson also interviewed Governor Doug Ducey, who is a Catholic, on Immaculate Heart Radio about his opposition to legal marijuana. I'm, again, not a big church person, but one thing I definitely am is against intermingling of church and state. So here we have two blaring examples. We have the actual governor sitting down on a Catholic radio channel, basically a platform of religion, a religious platform, and participating in it as if the state and the religion are married as one thing. Now that's not as big of a glaring example as the Arizona Catholic Conference printing their joint statement opposing this measure in the Secretary of State's publicity pamphlet. If state funds were used for that, that's straight up against the Constitution, the First Amendment. The conference is also, all right, yeah, we read that. So not all churches are opposed. We can go on with this one. I'm going to cover this in a different clip because these people wrote a letter, and the letter is worth a look. It's the religious groups that say yes to Prop 205, and I'm going to do a whole story about that. This clip went a little bit farther than I wanted it to, but overall, yeah, church and state mixing, the wrong side of history. If, you know, what would Jesus do? I think was the name of her article or something to that effect. What would Jesus do? Would he keep locking people up for minor marijuana offenses? You know, what else is Jesus going to do? I'll tell you what, if Jesus was the guy that they wrote about in the Bible, he'd probably be smoking marijuana. Jesus wouldn't have been happy about the propaganda that was racist propaganda used to make marijuana illegal in the first place. Let's not forget that most of the time Christianity's been around, marijuana was legal. Marijuana was legal all the way until 1937's Marijuana Tax Stamp Act. Marijuana really started getting cracked down on in the 70s, as we all know. But marijuana has been legal for most of the time Christianity has been a thing. You can go back thousands of years. Marijuana's been around longer than Christianity has been around. It's been written about longer than Jesus has been written about. If you look at when they say Jesus lived and the time that Jesus was around, marijuana was already an industry most of the world was using, you know. And I'm not just talking about smoking it, I'm talking about hemp, I'm talking about the whole plant, the oil, the seeds, everything, the fiber. Marijuana is one of the most written about plants that we have on this planet. It's one of the most industrial plants that there is known to man. You can make just about anything from it. And the reason that it is illegal is because of all that, not because it gets you high. And the reason that the get you high part of it is so unsettling to so many people is it's not just a body buzz. It's not just like alcohol where it makes your brain just kind of shut down while your body just feels like it's just wasted. It's not like that. It's more like your mind is what gets the buzz. And it's in a good way. And it's in the kind of way that makes you want to think about things a little bit deeper, just a little one step deeper than if you didn't smoke marijuana and you had to think about something. Well, when you smoke marijuana and you think about God, and you think about the Bible, and you think about the stories in the Bible, you start to think, this sounds like bullshit. What is this? What is this virgin birth? What is this, the world is flat? You know, what is this, the world is the center of the universe? What is this, God gives a fuck about one planet out of trillions of possible planets? This is the one that somehow, at one time, he cared about. What's Noah's Ark? How in the hell do you put every animal on the planet on a fucking boat? and then make sure they don't kill each other before 40 days and 40 nights or whatever the fuck. So, without going on a rant against everything there is to do with Christianity, let's not forget that the the other religions are just as against marijuana as Christianity, so it's not just them. Religion, why is it against marijuana? I'll say it one more time. You see through the bullshit when you smoke marijuana. The more you smoke, the more religion just looks like a joke. And these groups are not the only ones. I'm going to do another clip here shortly about the Massachusetts situation, where we have about $850,000 coming from the Catholic Church directly to oppose marijuana. So, you know, does it matter? It doesn't matter. Like, I hate to live in one of these states that's legalizing marijuana right now, because that's what you do. You turn on the TV, and I'm guessing at this point, the commercials are nothing but Hillary sucks, Trump sucks, say yes to marijuana, say no to marijuana, Hillary, Trump, marijuana, marijuana, Hillary, Trump, marijuana, marijuana, Trump, Hillary, marijuana, Trump, blah, blah. You got to be going bug shit crazy by now, just like freaking out, like, oh my God, I can't turn the TV on at all. I wouldn't be able to. So I would hate to live in one of those states, and that's what that's my next point is, why does it matter how much more money you spent at this point to put more of them commercials up there? And I was going to do a whole bunch of these commercials and just rip them apart, but it's not necessary. They're all using the same propaganda as these churches are using the same propaganda as the other people in other states that are doing it. And, you know, what you got is just a bunch of the same old commercials with different faces and different things going on in them. And, you know, you could look back in the history of marijuana prohibition and probably collect all the anti-marijuana commercials that were on TV, and it's about the same amount as what you have right now, just all being ran right now at once. And they're the worst commercials you've ever seen. I mean, at least the old days, the marijuana propaganda commercials were kind of funny. These ones are trying to be serious, and it's not working at all. It's garbage. So there we are, guys. We're right on the edge of this vote, this 2016 election, which is the biggest marijuana movement in the history of legalizing marijuana. There's 9 states in play, and they're throwing every fucking thing that they got at this, at the wall. And it's not just they are everyone that's ever thrown something at the wall. They're trying to make it stick. They're trying to make the people that don't know the facts about marijuana, I guess. I don't know who their target audience is, but they're really pushing somebody's buttons, and they're trying really hard. All right.